All right, down here in the archives, I was looking at some of their small arms, and there was 3 unique Russian small arms I wanted to point out to you real quick. First off, they have a real Fedorov down here. If you're a serious gun guy, you know what this is. Technically speaking, it's the first assault rifle. It was designed prior to World War I. It saw limited use by Russian forces. It uses an intermediate 6.5 caliber, and it was actually used somewhat as an assault rifle. Now, granted, the German Sturmgewehr of World War II fame is what we consider to be the first original assault rifle, and when you look at how the weapon's used today, that's an accurate depiction. However, from a technical point of view, if you want to say what is truly the world's first assault rifle, you got to go way back to the Fedorov. Really cool gun. Also note the vertical foregrip. They were way ahead of their time on this. Next up, we have a really unique gun. I spotted this immediately. Somewhat of a pre-production prototype SKS, and you can see a lot of influence from the Tokarev, the SVT-38 and SVT-40 when you look up in this region, but when you look at the underfolding bayonet and the basic layout of the gun, essentially a pre-production SKS with a lot of Tokarev flavoring. Really cool gun. Now, of course, you guys know what this is. However, this is one of the Army's trials AK-47 pre-production test guns. This is one of the guns, I believe it's number 118, that was used in Army trials, and according to the individual who runs the archive down here, this was actually presented to Stalin for his approval. You can see a lot of the early features, such as the stamped sheet metal receiver, but you can also see it has features such as the 2-port muzzle brake that they later abandoned, obviously. Charging handle differences, really cool gun. Some people might call this an AK-46. It more accurately would be called a pre-production prototype AK-47. This is even before the first model AK. Really cool gun, and outside of this room, priceless. Okay, in Moscow, we got a chance to put our hands on one of the very rare pre-production prototype test sample AKs. Curator of the Museum of the Archive in the Central Armed Forces Museum told me it was called an AK-46 at the time. That's a rough term for a pre-production prototype AK. This happens to be a real first model AK, and as we know, it was influenced heavily by the German Sturmgewehr. Between me, you, and the fence post, I don't care what the Russians say, this gun played a major role in the design and the mindset of the AK. They want to downplay it for propaganda reasons, even to this day, but there's no doubt when the Russians ran up against this on the Eastern Front, it definitely had an impact and helped lead to this gun. Now, the first model AK, this particular one is a good example, uses a stamped sheet metal receiver like the AK-46 prototype in Moscow that we saw. Understand, they had issues with the stamped sheet metal receiver, and then later, they went to a milled receiver, so-called Type 2, and then later Type 3. Only when they got into the AKM did they start using a truly perfected stamped sheet metal receiver. The propaganda answer at the time was they needed the stamped sheet metal capabilities and other aspects of their war industry. The reality of it is they had issues perfecting the stamped sheet metal receiver and went to a forging instead. This particular weapon is on loan from a good friend of mine. I want to shout out to him. He's going to remain anonymous. We'll be able to film it for you for your enjoyment on TAC TV.